Hey guys, let's talk about the Canon EOS R6 and does it overheat? I don't know about you, but when I heard the announcement for the Canon EOS R6, I got really excited. I'm not spec driven. I'm all about real world results. You guys know that. I always talk about that. But when they were talking about 4K, basically no crop, 4K 60, 120, 1080, which I wish it was 4K, IBIS, for under $2,500, I was pretty stoked because I'm pretty heavily invested in Canon at this point with the glass and everything else. So yeah, when the camera came out, I knew I had to get it. For me, the R6 was the perfect camera, so I bought it. I'm shooting on it right now. This is the image, 4K, 24 frames per second. I think it looks really good. So let's talk about some of the things I love about this camera. I love the image, number one. I mean, the image is great. The 4K out of this camera is really, really sharp. You will not be disappointed with it. I love the fact that it shoots in C-Log. I love the fact that it's 422 10-bit, which is amazing for color grading. I love that about this camera. I love the fact that the battery is new and improved. It's really good. I'm still shooting on the same charge I had from last night when I shot a 30-minute interview, and I'm at 50% left on my battery. So it's really, really good. I love the fact that it's got a headphone jack, so I can monitor my audio. That's great. I love the fact that they moved the plug for the mic so the flip screen will rotate all the way around and it doesn't get in the way of that mic jack, which is, thank you Canon for finally doing that. I love the ergonomics. The ergonomics are great on this camera. If you're used to shooting with any kind of Canon camera, this is going to be a breeze for you. I love the menu system. That hasn't changed. So I love all of that. So the question you guys are probably wanting to know, and while you're here, does it overheat? And I can tell you that no, it does not. Not for me, it has not overheated. I have shot a ton of content with this camera, professional and YouTube stuff, and matter of fact, the last 3 or 4 months I've had this and everything I've shot has been on this camera. So no overheating issues at all shooting in 4K. Matter of fact, I think I've maybe shot in 1080 on this thing twice, with the exception of shooting in 120. So yeah, no overheating issues at all. So now that we got that out of the way, let's continue on with the things that I like. I really like the fact this thing does 4K technically without a crop. There's a small crop, but you're not gonna notice. 4K 60, which is great. It looks amazing, so I'm really happy with that. Low light capabilities, this thing shoots great in low light. Love that. So let's talk about the things about this camera that I do not like. And there are a few, not a lot, but there are a few. I do not like the 120 in 1080p out of this camera. It's usable, and I do use it on some shoots. But when you go to start pushing the footage, it has just got noise in it, even in just real bright lit situations. It can be noisy, some artifacts, and it's usable. It's soft compared, I guess because I'm comparing it to the 4K. But hey, it's there. I would rather have it in there than not have it. And yes, I do use it on occasions, but I have just really, I wish they would have just, I don't know, improved the 1080p 120. I'm not asking for 4K 120, but yeah, that's my first gripe. The second gripe that I have about this camera is the files are a nightmare to work with. I have a pretty decent Mac, pretty decent setup. It can handle a lot. But when I put this thing into the timeline in Final Cut Pro, oh wow. it is a nightmare to work with. And I had never used Proxy files before because it's just another step in the editing process that I don't want to deal with. But guess what? If I want to shoot in 4K, I have to go in and use Proxy files. So that's one thing I do not like about this camera. Those are really my two biggest gripes. I really don't have any other really gripes. It's dual card slots. I don't shoot a lot of weddings, so that's not a big deal to me. I've never had an SD card just absolutely go corrupt on me. I mean, it does happen, and it's going to happen to me at some point in time, but that's really wasn't a deal for me. Probably the biggest complaint that I have about this camera though is the IBIS. It's awful. Like there's times where it really works and it works well, and I'm like, wow, you know, because I shoot handheld. Everything I do is handheld. I mean, I have a gimbal, but I just never use it. So I was really excited about that. And then the first time I went out and did a shoot, I got back and edited the footage, and it was just doing this. Like, you know, I shoot on a 17 to 40 mil Canon EOS series lens, and so it's pretty decently wide lens. Ooh, it was almost unusable. Like, it just almost made me sick looking at it because it's just so back and forth wobbly. Like I said, so when it works, it's like magic. When it doesn't, ooh, it's bad. So a lot of times I turn it off. So that's probably my biggest complaint out of this camera. I'm okay with the price point. You know, it's not the most expensive camera out there. It's not the cheapest, and $2,500 is a big chunk of change, but I think it's well worth it. The camera just is so far out of Canon cameras, you know, in this mirrorless lineup. I think they're heading in the right direction. So I would prefer this camera over the EOS R5, and I've not used that camera, but I don't want to use 8K, and I wish this had 4K 120. That's probably the only reason I would go for the R5, but who wants to spend, was it $34.99? I'd save $1,000, buy this camera, you will not be disappointed. I primarily was using the Canon EOS R before I purchased this camera, and I've been really happy with this camera. It had some limitations, but I've been really happy with it. This image, you will notice a distinct difference between this image and the image out of the R. This image is a lot softer, so it is a pretty big jump improvement in my opinion. One more thing that I hear a lot of people talk about is the color science out of the R6 is different than the R5 and different than the R and things like that. But if you shoot in C-Log like I do because of the dynamic range, then you're definitely going to be happy with this camera, and that's really not going to matter. That was my biggest complaint about the R. Even in C-Log, the dynamic range was not that great. It is a noticeable difference between this and the R6. It is definitely better. Is it to the level of a Sony? No, it's not, but it's really, really, really good. So if you're looking at the Canon EOS R6 and you're kind of a hybrid shooter and you do photography and you do video, I lean heavily on video, so I didn't talk about that a whole lot, but this thing takes great photos. 20 megapixel, but who's gonna blow up a picture the size of a billboard? I'm not going to, so that was not a big deal to me, but it takes great pictures. So easy to use, the ergonomics are great, the image is amazing. You have C-Log, 422 10-bit, you do have 120 if you need it, 4K 60. I mean, this is a great camera, so check it out. I hope you enjoyed this review. Like and share. Is that what they say? Like, share, and subscribe. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.